Welcome back to the third in this week's series on Exodus chapters 19 and 20, where we're camped at Mount Sinai as the covenant between God and Israel is renewed and the Ten Commandments are given to Israel. Already we've noticed that these events take place after God has saved Israel out of slavery in Egypt. They have already been redeemed. And so within the terms of the covenant, the Ten Commandments are how Israel is to live in relationship with God, now that they are already saved. Now, when Israel lives in this way, within the terms of the covenant, they will indeed be God's treasured possession, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And it's hard to overstate the importance of these Ten Commandments in shaping laws and culture throughout the Western world over pretty much the past 4,000 years. Although much has been written and much could be said on this topic, our purpose here is simply to consider how we might grow in our relationship with the God who spoke these commands as disciples of Jesus Christ. So now let's review the first command. You shall have no other gods before me. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Straightforward to say, harder to do. There is to be nothing else, no one else, that takes the place of God. There is no greater love, no greater allegiance, no prior commitment. God alone is first. He alone is supreme for us, even in the basic practicalities of our lives. For the Israelites, having just escaped from Egypt, having lived in the Egyptian and social and religious culture for more than 400 years, they were accustomed to many gods. And as soon as you have many gods, you have divine competition, conflict, and chaos. The literature of many other ancient cultures tell of pantheons of gods conspiring against each other, competing with each other, plotting and fighting against each other, sometimes even killing each other. And as a result, these ancient cultures, the people in them tended to be functional and opportunistic worshippers. Among a shopping mall of gods, which one do I need to get what I want done? Is it the rain god, the fertility god, the gods of war? Who am I going to call? And what if one god gets jealous of my sacrifices to another god? How do I buy them both off? This kind of religion is an insult to the one true and living God. No, Israel, you have only one God, and there are actually no others on the side. In fact, there are no actual gods at all. They are only the inventions of the human mind. But even a false god is not to be tolerated alongside the living God. And just in case we think that we're far too sophisticated to worship any other gods, we quickly remember that we are just as creative when it comes to making up our own false deities, the gods of status, wealth, power, sex and fame. That's why Jesus himself says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." You might like to ponder this question a little later. What might I need to do to cut down the biggest competition to God in my life? Perhaps it's a pursuit, an ambition, a person, or a desire. Maybe you are God's biggest competition in your life. See, no one can serve two masters. The second commandment seems to work in tandem with the first. It says, "You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." There's a lot going on here, but what's different to the first command is that no image is to be made to represent the true and living God. This is not referring to making an idol or a statue that represents some other god. That's already been covered off by the first commandment, worship no other gods before the one true and living God. Although, just in case you're tempted to carve for yourself your own idol from a block of wood, then you can refer to this second commandment as well. Just don't do it. And what about the consequences of making an idol for the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the idol maker? Doesn't it seem kind of unfair that they should, as we usually say, have the sins of the fathers visited upon the sons? Well, actually, there's no injustice here when we remember to read all the way to the end of the sentence. God punishes the generations of all those who hate him. That is, where every generation hates God. Every generation receives justice. On the other side of the same coin, God shows love to every generation of those who love him. So the hatred of God being specifically forbidden here is when a human makes and uses an image of a sculpture or anything, or any likeness of anything anywhere as a means of worshipping the true and living God. And why is this bad? Because it limits God's glory in our imaginations and minds. Yes, God might be strong like an ox is strong, but we should never represent God as an ox. He's so much stronger than any ox or anything else that we might imagine as strong. Why would we limit God's glory by representing him as an ox? And why would we limit God's love by representing him as an ox? I mean, oxen are a good illustration of great strength, but they're a terrible illustration of love. See, we limit God by representing him in objects of worship. Yes, God has revealed himself in all creation, but he's not to be confused with his creation. We dare not limit God or imagine him as something less than he actually is, or confuse ourselves with false tools of worship. I have no problem with art of all kinds used to glorify God or to teach others about God, but we don't confuse God with the art. We don't think for a moment that our art, whether it be an ancient painting or artifact or a sculpture, that the art is a pathway to God such that we worship our God and worship our way through the art to God. The only way the Christian worships God is through Jesus Christ, by the Holy Spirit. And we said earlier that these commands reveal God to us, as well as showing us how to live in relationship with him. So what do these first two commandments show us? Well, we learn that God is a jealous God, that his love for us is a jealous love. He will tolerate no rivals to our love. Now, we can instinctively think of jealousy as maybe a bad trait. There is a kind of jealousy that's wrong because it is unfounded. It is a coveting without basis or claim. But a woman or a man who is jealous for the affections of their spouse, they are actually virtuous. In the context of a marriage, jealousy can be a good expression of love. For example, imagine a husband is found flirting with another woman. His wife is right to be jealous. Her loyal and strong love for her husband means she won't stand by wringing her hands wondering whether she should say something. The very real and robust quality of her love for her husband means that she'll grab her husband and take him out of harm's way. Love, in this sense, can get angry and will not tolerate another rival. In this example, if a wife sees competition for the love of her husband but just shrugs her shoulders and wanders off, well, we'd question the quality of love that she really has for her husband. Maybe that marriage is already over. No, there is a righteous jealousy that won't allow love to be undermined. And so in these first two commandments, God's jealousy for the undivided love of his people demonstrates his strong and passionate love for them. Living in covenant relationship with God who loves us like this means no other God is worshipped before him, and that no representations or images are substituted for him. May we love God truly in response to his initiative of love toward us. So for your reflection, what might I need to do to cut down the biggest competition to God in my life? Is it a pursuit, an ambition, a person, or a desire, or is it me? And how do I cultivate my love for God with all my heart and soul and mind and strength?